So today we're going to go over three different things. I don't have text to give you on the three things. As we go through the year and use it, you can reference back to this video. It'll also be stuff that once you have an idea of what it is, you can look up the information you need fairly easily. So the first thing we're going over is, as you can see from the picture, accuracy versus precision. So precision is hitting the same spot multiple times. Accuracy is hitting the target or the center multiple times. That's how we're really going to be using this for the first thing that we're doing. We'll also look at this with measurement as we go along, and I'll talk about a little bit more then accurate measurements versus precise measurements. But accurate is being where you want to be. Precise is being consistent in what you do. Okay, so if I'm throwing something, right, and I'm throwing it trying to throw it out the door, right? If I hit the window 5 times in a row, I was precise. I now have a broken window, and I was not accurate because of that is the reason I have the broken window. If it goes out the door every time, but one time it goes through the top of the door, one time it goes down the bottom of the door, and one time it's in the middle, I was accurate, but I was not precise because I wasn't hitting the same spot. So that's what we're looking at with our difference between accuracy and precision. The next thing we're talking about is a decision matrix. So our decision matrix, we have things that we want or don't want on the top, right? And we have our ideas in the column on the left-hand side. So this is looking at making these little block things. That's not really important for what we're doing right here, right? But we have our different ways of doing it, our ideas, and then we have our criteria going across. And then you have your total. You need to think this has 4 as the best. So then the higher the score, the better. You can set that up either way. So if you want a low score, if you're a golfer, you want a low score to be what you want, then 1 would be the best and 4 would be the worst. We'd change those. I also need to consider that for my yes and no. So self-adhering is a yes or no. Reusable is a yes or no. So if I want to reuse it, if that's a positive, then I want that to be a yes. If I wanted a low score, then I would want to either change what my yes no is or say not reusable. So then I'm getting the accurate score. So you want to take into account is saying yes to this a good thing or not. So then I put my things in there and label them. So like cost, all right? I have a low cost would be good, a high cost would be bad because it's basically you always want to pay less, right? Then I add these up and I get my numbers for what we're doing. So here, the interlocking centimeter cubes look like my best thing. You do need to consider if there may be things you're taking into account other than this. So for example, if I have a budget of $1,000 and the dice, right, which is a high cost, if that came out to be the best on everything else, it might show up here as the best, but the cost might make it not work. Right? We're getting solid gold dice, and they're like $5,000 a piece, and now I can't afford to do my project. So even though it came out to be the best, there's a reason it doesn't work. Right? So your decision matrix is not the only thing you're using in making the decision. It's weighing your options. So it's giving me an idea of how the things rank. So normally you probably want to go with what's at the top of the list. But you might have a couple things at the top and still need to make other decisions, or you might have something at the top that doesn't meet some other criteria. Okay? But the decision matrix, this is pretty much how we set it up, and we want to use that to look at our alternatives and rank how they work with our different criteria. And finally, we're talking about our design brief. So I'm going to talk through on this what a design brief is and also a little bit about the assignment. So what is up here is actually what you're doing on the that you're turning in today, right? Which is doing a design brief for the shopping cart redesign. You want to do it considering what you saw in the video from the deep dive, but you don't want to do it for what they did. So, your client, which is the first thing, right? The client is who you're working for. Okay, it's not what it was in the video. You're making up a client, so you can make up your own company. You can pick an actual company. Right? You could use ShopRite or Walmart or something there. You would also make up your own store. But the client is the customer or who's paying you for the thing. The end user is who's going to use the new product. Okay? So who's going to end up using it, right? So if I'm at ShopRite, right, who's using the shopping cart? That's your end user. The designer is the person writing the design brief. Okay, who's responsible for doing the division? So this could be you. Okay, you just put your name in there. Again, you can make up a company. You can use a real company if you want. All right, you want to say the designer of this new shopping cart is Tesla. You're allowed to do that. All right, but the design, you're picking the design. The next three things is figuring out what's going on with what you're doing. So you're looking at the actual thing and responding to that. So your problem statement. Okay? If you look underneath that, it says, what was the problem the design team was trying to solve? Okay? Write your answer as a complete sentence. So a couple things on the problem statement. Okay? The problem statement should be writing out what the issue is, but it's not giving the solution. Right? So if I have a desk and it's not meeting the criteria that I want it to meet, okay, my problem statement is my desk doesn't fit my needs. Right? You can be more specific than that, but you don't want to constrain what you're doing. So if my desk isn't high enough, my problem statement can be the desk isn't high enough. But I don't want to say we need to figure out how to shorten the desk. All right? Because you don't want to put a solution in the problem statement. The problem statement is just saying this is our problem. Right? The design statement. So if you read underneath this, it says, to what degree was the solution to be realized? Now we're doing this. This again goes with a shopping cart. All of these should be looking future, not past. So to what degree do I want the solution to be realized? How far am I going with this? Was the design team to merely sketch an idea and be done? Was it come with an idea or build it? So how far in the process am I going? If you go back to the design process, how far in the design process are we going? Right? What expectations do you have? So for the design statement should not have your solution in it. Okay, it should leave it open ended. This is before we go through all the brainstorming stuff. This is before you come up with the ideas. So the design statement is saying this is where we're going, but it's not giving the solution. So on the desk, my design statement could say something like, we want to design and build, right? That's giving me how far I'm planning on going, a desk that fits the height requirements that Mr. Ream is looking for. Okay, so that's giving. It's not telling you how you're doing it, right? So you could be putting it on stilts. You could be putting extra drawers in it. You could be making something that goes on top of the desk to make it higher, right? You have a lot of options that you haven't talked about in your design statement, but you also stated that you want to fix the problem of the height, and you said that how far you're going with it, right? You said you're building it. So maybe you're doing it, maybe in a different design, you're doing something and you're coming up with a solution, but you're not designing it. So we're going to sketch a desk that would fit the requirements, right? Or we're going to come up with the criteria and constraints for this desk. Which takes us to our next thing, our criteria and constraints. So criteria is things that you want to have met. Okay, so if I want my desk to be 5 feet high, okay, that's a criteria. If I want it, the top of it to be flat, that's a criteria. A constraint is things I'm working under. So cost is normally a constraint. Time is normally a constraint. You only have so much time to work with. Again, you're doing this for the shopping cart, but not from the video. So you can use their ideas for this, but their constraints are different from you. Their constraint for time was 5 days. That's insane. Okay, if you have a time constraint that is that tight, I'm taking points off. Right? Try thinking about how long do you think it would actually take to do this and come up with a constraint there. Your constraint should also be specific, right? So if you're taking a cost constraint, now I don't expect you to know how much it costs to design a shopping cart, but come up with something that you think is a reasonable cost. But it shouldn't say, oh, my constraints are costs, right? No. What is your cost constraint? Can I spend $100, $1,000, $1 million? What's a reasonable cost? Same thing with constraint. Am I taking a month? Am I taking 8 years? Right? Again, 8 years would be ridiculous. So try to keep it realistic, but you don't actually know. So you have some flexibility there, right? But you're coming up with those constraints. I'll put this in the rules for criteria and constraints. I want to say you should have at least 4 of each. So 4 criteria, 4 things that you want to have, and 4 constraints, 4 things that are restricting you. All right. So I've given you 2 constraints that you can use, which are time and cost. You need to come up with 2 other things. Again, your problem statement, you can probably pretty much look at what they talk about in the video and be fairly similar to what they said. Use some of their ideas. If you want to come up with your own thing, I don't think they gave you a problem statement directly, but if you want to come up with your own thing, that's fine. Your design statement should basically be completely separate from the video. You're looking at your own design, right? So again, running back through these, the client is the person that is hiring you. The end user is the person who's going to use the product after it's made. The designer is the person who's solving this problem, right? All 3 of those, well, the first and the third, the second one you don't really have. The first and the third, you can make that up for what you're doing on this assignment, right? Your problem statement is stating out the problem in a precise statement. Your design statement is saying, in a general way, how is this problem statement going to be solved? Again, you don't want to be specific, right? So how far are you going, and to what degree are you making the solution? But you're not saying, oh, the solution is this. Okay? So you're saying, giving a way you're going to solve the problem without being specific. Okay? Your criteria are things that you want to have, and your constraints are things that are constraining you, that you can't go over or under or whatever, depending on the constraint, right? So constraints are restrictions. That's the word I was looking for.